Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Tabletopped. And as we predicted last year, the Scryptids are back. Today, I'm joined by, of course, Nat Mesnard and Brigitte Winter. They are both developers. Brigitte, you're an editor. Nat, what is your official title? Are you a game dev, or are you also a writer, or like what's the official thing in Scryptid?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, Brigitte and I, our official titles are co-director, which means we sort of split directing the company. And as far as like what we do that's different, I focus on internal facing stuff. So I'm more operations and production, and Brigitte focuses on external, which is more like event planning, marketing, like relating with customers and stuff. But we both kind of also do all of it.
Yeah. And then when there's a project, we'll take turns being the producer of the project. Sometimes one of us is the editor versus the other, but we're always working really closely on everything.
Yeah. And speaking of collaboration, we are having you guys here to talk about your upcoming project, the Scryptid Anthology, where you guys actually are bringing in a bunch of game designers, developers from the community, and creating sort of an anthology book where all of these people are going to be providing game is it campaigns? Is it just supplements? What is the anthology? What are all of these people in your community supplying you? Because when I look at the list here, because I'm in BackerKit as we talk, and I'm looking at your launch page, you guys have some big names like Avery Alder. People will know Avery from Monster Hearts, The Quiet Year, like some pretty big titles. There's like a lot of people in here that have a lot of stuff under their belt. So what is the anthology? What's inside of it? And what made you decide to do this now?
Yeah, very, very excited about this project. We are calling it Tales from the Cryptids. So it is both our first anthology and it is our first release that is actually focused on cryptids, which we think is pretty funny because we're Scryptid Games, right? We have cryptid in our name. Mothman is our logo. And so people come and they come to our booth at cons and they ask for our cryptid game, and we do not have a cryptid game yet. So why not answer that by having many, many, many cryptid games all grouped together in our first anthology. So this is going to be an anthology that includes ttrpgs, but also fiction, poetry, what we're calling weird ephemera, that marginalia that will actually literally exist in the margins of this book. As you said, we have a number of really great contributors who are already signed on, like wonderful people from the game design world, but then also some cool authors and poets. And then once this funds, we're going to do our very first open call in spring of 2026. And so it will be an opportunity for a variety of different folks to engage with Scryptid Games. This is something we've been building toward. We're really focused on community. And so, we have been spending the past several years building incredible relationships with other designers and writers, and just really excited to see what we get from this open call.
That's so exciting. And also, it's really great to hear that you guys are actually kind of executing on one of your kind of, even at the beginning, a few years ago when we first started talking, you were all talking about how you all sort of love and come from like the zine world as well. And that you wanted to incorporate sort of the other types of creative output that kind of is on the outskirts of TTRPGs, like poetry, writing, fiction, all that kind of stuff. So it's really cool that you're actually now doing that. That's awesome. What is, if someone were walking up to the booth and were saying like, oh, I want your cryptid game, and you hand over the anthology and they're like, what can I expect of this when it comes to the actual games inside? Is this something that you're able to tell? Because I know we're still very much in like early days and I don't want to spoil anything, but are they different systems? Are they all going off of sort of like an in-house system that you're using to unify them? What is the sort of mechanical structure of the book?
Yes, that's a great question. So we're taking inspiration from some other game anthologies that I really enjoyed, where the focus is on just everything is its own one-off short TTRPG. So if folks want to design with us an existing system, I think we're open to that. But we're not going to be like aligning them together. It's not necessarily so focused on expansion content or system neutral whatevers. The idea is more to create a vehicle for people to design short and complete games. And what I have in my head for this is the level one anthology, which Ninth Level Games publishes for Free RPG Day. And that's an anthology that I've actually submitted to and had games in a number of times, and really have just enjoyed over the years seeing the submissions and what gets published there. And that stuff just is a whole range of stuff. And often what it is a designer will have an idea for a game, and because there's a word limit, which we also have for this anthology, Tales from the Cryptids, it allows a game designer to write like a very concise and simple version of a maybe an idea that they would expand later, and to kind of develop the full like small version of whatever that system is. Also open to games that are very soft and story game-ish, as well as someone who's like, oh, I came up with this fun little D6 system. Like, there are three things that you do in this game with this system. Here it is. It's 1,000 words. We can play it in 45 minutes. So that's kind of what we're looking for. And then, of course, alongside that, we want like expanded universe stuff with the other kinds of submissions that we're accepting.
That's really cool. Let's talk about the submission process and like sort of why you guys are doing that right now. All of the people I've met at Scryptid are designers. You basically all have at this point put some sort of gaming content out into the world. Brigitte, you did Psychic Trash Detectives. Nat, you're doing assemblage and some other things as well. You both are very very knowledgeable about this sort of subject. So why go to the community to look for this kind of content where you could just create a scripted game that is about cryptids, and there you go, you have Scryptids Cryptids. So why did you choose to go to the community at this point?
Yeah, this has always been our goal from the moment we founded this company. It's very, very important to us that we be a platform for other marginalized creators, right? We are 100% queer company, and we are very focused on creating content that appeals to other people who don't necessarily see themselves represented in the more conventional game space. And so we wanted to be both a design studio where we were working with one another to create games and put them into the world, but we also wanted to be a space where once we had the reach, we could platform other creators who need this kind of reach. And so I think we're finally there, which is really exciting. We can finally extend that opportunity to others. We've built wonderful connections with other creators. You can see, who's signed on already, right, to this anthology. And so this is I think the beginning for us of really expanding our brand to be a publisher, and to be publishing other amazing creators alongside our own work.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I think in addition to everything Brigitte is saying, I think there is something really exciting in zine culture and in games about it as an opportunity to encounter new ideas. Just thinking about Metatopia, which is the game designer convention that Brigitte and I go to every year. Part of what's really exciting about Metatopia is I play a lot of games by people. The games are rough because it's for playtesting and development. And the cool thing about doing this format, instead of always publishing our own games or signing a single title, which is also fun for other reasons, is that you get to delve into things that are more experimental and to interact with and think about a lot of them. And that is so exciting to me. Like, I love doing that in person at playtesting conventions. And then I love that as an occasion for publishing because it scratches the brain itch.
Yeah, I also love just the idea of having games alongside fiction, alongside poetry, alongside visual art, and really, providing a sampling of all of those things for people to engage with is so exciting. I think, we are all writers of fiction and poetry and creative nonfiction in addition to games. And I think to us, it makes complete sense to see games as part of a literary tradition and be in conversation with other kinds of writing. But I have not seen an anthology quite like this one, where really all of those things are going to be given equal weight and to be in dialogue with one another, and where somebody can actually open this book and see those connections and engage with all of this different media in the exciting way that I think we have always thought of games.
Yeah, this is really exciting. There's so many things that came up as you guys were talking that I might go back and then sort of catch myself up. But the first thing when you were, Nat, talking about zine culture, I was in San Francisco probably like 6 months, maybe 8 months ago. And there's a pretty famous bookshop that is all zines from like local and semi-local folks. And what you said there that I really loved and experienced in the shop was that the collision of ideas is so exciting. And so I think that in games, we really don't get that as much, because even in certain things like right now I'm thinking of, oh gosh, what did they call it? The Citadel. There was this one released by Dungeons and Dragons where they had the Radiant Citadel, and it was all different POC and queer designers, and they all sort of riffed on this theme set in this place. But even then, it had to be sort of processed through the lens of D&D. So there wasn't while things could be different in tone slightly, it was all sort of, flattened to make sure that they could exist together. And I really like this idea that you're allowing your audience to actually consume a bunch of this stuff and then just say like, this is great, I'm going to use this, which is like what I always think is the best way to give GMs or players the ability to kind of create their own atmosphere at the table. You know what I mean? So very excited about that. But I also wanted to talk a little bit too about sort of the ideas in the game development side. So Nat, you were talking about going to that convention where you're playing a lot of rough games. And Brigitte, you were talking about kind of putting out this open call, but while having some limitations around sort of like word count and other things to try to make sure that it can fit in just basically size wise. But when you are looking for things for people to submit, as you were talking about, what is the sort of thing that you're looking for? And when you have 1,000 words, what are you looking to see, and what excites Scryptid to maybe give the tabletop listeners a little bit of a leg up if this is something they're interested in submitting for? So what would you be interested in seeing submitted?
Yeah, I can start. So I think that the thing that's going to tie all of this together, right? We've talked about different game systems and different media and sort of all of this stuff, but it is intended to all connect around a shared theme. So these are going to be stories about cryptids, but the idea is that the book is intended to flip the lens on conventional cryptid lore. So it's tales from the cryptids. It's not about cryptids. This is not cryptid hunting. This is not seeking out cryptids and othering them. This is about cryptids as beings with lives and goals and stories of their own to share, which is really exciting, I think, for us, because we're, as Scryptid Games, we're very interested in the strange and liminal and punk and outsider. And I think that is something that resonates with our audience and that you'll see in a lot of the games that we create. And so I think I'm excited to see stories and games about monsters that have agency. I'm really interested as an editor and also as a game designer myself in unusual game systems and mechanics. And we've always talked about the idea of immersive mechanics and ludonarrative harmony and sort of ways to have a game system that really deepens the experience of story. So that's always something that's really appealing to me. In writing about what we're looking for in the anthology. I think I said something about if I look at this game and I think, is that game actually a cryptid? Then I want it in the book. So, we want games that are playable. But I do think the weirder and more thoughtful, the better. I want to see folks taking risks. I want to see stories and games that are about cryptids that we have heard about, and also cryptids that we haven't. Like I want to see Mothman. I also want to know if an entire town or a memory could be a cryptid, right? What does that look like? And I want to see those kinds of stories and dialogue with one another. What do you think, Nat?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, to add on to that, like just like my, concrete brain, within those themes, I look for games that are games, which, over the lifetime of Scryptid Games, it's been really interesting just in the capacity of a publisher to think about aesthetic, artistic, and then commercial and practical definitions of what games are.
Yeah.
Because in an aspirational and aesthetic sense, there is a type of gatekeeping that happen when you say this is a game or this is not a game. And I think we're interested in playing on the edge of that sometimes to kind of play against that gatekeeping, right? Because definitions are a way that people keep people, like, let people in and out of things, right? So like with that being part of the reality that we live in and looking for games that are cryptids, on the like practical side of like sorting through submissions and thinking about like how to curate an anthology, there's also a side to me that is sensitive to the idea that like a game has a shape. Yeah. And this is something I've been thinking about recently, actually, in my own design practice, which is that, you get all these ideas, then eventually you shape it into a coherent whole. And sometimes that whole is like a gameplay loop that you do with a dice system. Other times it's a narrative arc that like progresses, like more interactive fiction or a story game. But yeah, like I look for like that sort of sense of wholeness when I'm looking for a game, even if it's a short one. A great example is Lasers and Feelings, which is your classic one pager that a lot of people hack to write one pagers. And the thing about Lasers and Feelings, even though it's just on a single piece of paper, is that it has this sense of a whole, that the mechanics described on that piece of paper and the setting described there, you could kind of tell an entire story from start to finish using those tools.
Yeah.
So with that, it's like, that's kind of what I look for. And I guess really it's according to my own values, I shouldn't be like whether or not that's a game. Right. Like it's scripted, but I think just that sense of like there is a shape here that scratches the brain itches and like gets me somewhere. Like I went from here and I ended up there, whether or not that was going in a circle or going on a trajectory.
I never have heard it put like that, but I think that is so fascinating and explains all of my game choices. Because I think that for me, I really move away from gameplay loops because things like comic books never appealed to me because they have no ending, right? They have to be self-sustaining. And so that kind of means that you can't ever believe one thing is more important than another thing because there's going to be something after it that they have to continue into. And so I've always thought that what that meant is I really love endings. But I think that what you're saying, what you just said, and what I think that all of the listeners should think about is whether you want to create in your game a loop of gameplay or a trajectory that has an out. Because I think that is like so interesting as a design concept. Going to be thinking about that one for a while. But also I want to kind of come back to community as well. So Scryptid is, it's not a megacorp yet. Maybe someday. when you throw off your punk coats and become suits,
we'll sell out.
Yeah, when you sell out. But communities are different for different size corporations, companies, groups, whatever. For huge mega corporations, there are sources of profit and also kind of like it's a one-way relationship where they provide you with something, you buy it or you don't. And it's really, that's kind of where it ends. You have medium-sized companies where there is a little bit because they don't have a big enough audience where they can just sort of like push everyone to the side and do what they're going to do. They have to have a little bit of a conversation. But I assume with Scryptid, you guys are like in the thick of the community, like kind of constantly. So as a publisher, but also as designers, how have you gone about managing your community, growing your community, and welcoming people in, and so that they can feel like they can engage with you in this way? Because a lot of corporations or even small publishers, indie presses, things like that, what Nat said earlier about gatekeeping is sort of the model where we're going to open up the gates to let people come in, but we're only going to let the ones that we choose. And that usually is fairly rigid. But from what I just heard, it seems like you guys are really looking to be expansive with what you're welcoming into the anthology. So how do you go about kind of creating that community, and how are you going about cultivating that within your designs, but also your management of your community and things like that?
That's such a cool question. I'm also like trying to think of big corporations as having community, and then I'm like, that's not what that is, right?
It sucks, but it's true. Like I think about like Microsoft. Like Microsoft Office has a community. They hate each other, but they have a community.
But also, that community does not belong to Microsoft, right? That community is inspired by the existence of Microsoft, right? Which is a company that has a transactional relationship with people who buy that product. And then they have created community around it, and it's their community. I think the difference is that for a small company like ours, right, we are trying to actually be in that community, be members of our own community, which means that information goes both ways, learning goes both ways. And we're really working to be in actual meaningful, authentic relationship with other people who share our values and who want to play games with us, right? I think that TTRPGs are in and of themselves such a great vehicle for community, especially the kinds of TTRPGs that we like to publish, and that, you know, for the most part we play, which are TTRPGs that explore things like sharing control and sharing power in intentional ways, and telling stories together, and building community out of story, and out of that shared experience. And so, you know, I think that is really built into the ethos of our company, and our own personal values, and all of those things are really tied up together. And what that looks like in action, you know, is that we are playing games with people all the time. We're going to conventions like Metatopia, where we are in relationship with other creators, and we're playing their games and they're playing ours, and everybody is being messy, and, you know, egos are not really part of that space, which is really, really an exciting space to be in as both a creator and a publisher. We have really strong relationships with small businesses in our cities, right? Nat is in New York City, and I am in Baltimore, and we have great relationships with local game stores, with indie bookstores, where we are running events and we are talking to people. We have great connections and conversations at conventions. That's really exciting. We've established a really cool, I think, friendship with you, Nick, just through doing, you know, this podcast and coming back a couple of times, and you know, and really learning from one another. I think, Nat, I'd love to pass it over to you to talk a little bit about learning, and about education, because I know that building communities of learning is something that's very interesting and important to you, and is something that you've built to Scryptid as part of our community building.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've been a games academic for, I think, about 8 years now, and generally like to teach, and am exploring like different ways of doing my teaching this year, which is exciting. Part of it is practical. I'm teaching less university classes now because I need more time to run Scryptid Games. And I do think communities of learning are a way to do this thing, which is to kind of build a platform and lift everyone up and engage with capitalism, which is necessary if you want to make books that you sell in bookstores and game stores, but then do it in such a way as to think of it as a place, like a community place, which I've been, you know, in the creative writing side of things, which is where I originally started teaching. I've been in spaces like that where it kind of just felt like a home.
Yeah.
And then sometimes those end, right? And you're like, now what? And part of my original vision in creating scripted games was like, oh, I want to create something that kind of feels like that. And I'm still learning how to do that. And it's takes forever because you have to learn how to run a business. But that's definitely something that's on my mind. I'm also a really big advocate of accessibility in game design, which I think is also borne out in how we like do product design for the stuff we publish. On the design side, you know, I love playing games with people who know how to play games. Like I do it all the time and it's so fun because we're all like, oh, we know what this is, I'm going to negotiate for advantage or whatever. Like, and it's so delightful to be in game groups where everyone's like an insider. It's like, I've been a nerd since I was 9, like that's a thing. But then for me, it's aspirational to make, platform, and publish games that are not necessarily for those people, because some of the most interesting experiences I've had of playing games have come from doing it with people that were not necessarily game literate, and then just like brought something weird or interesting to the table that got me thinking about how I relate with people, what it means to play with people, what is play, how do rules act on groups of people when someone knows more or less about a particular thing. Like I find those to be really interesting questions. So, with this anthology, I think short games actually force accessibility because you can't create a freaking tome that has to be like read for hours and hours to even understand the game. Like you have to distill it down into something that anyone could read. And I think that there are multiple levels across like what we do where that's borne out for us. And I never get tired of it. Like, I'm like, let's widen the circle. Let's bring more people in. And when I succeed at doing that with a specific thing, I'm always like, that was so cool. So
I love that you said that, Nat, because, I think that is one of the differences between us and our backgrounds, right? I hate those spaces where everybody's like, I know all the things and I've been playing this since I was 5, because that isn't how I came to games. And I think it's just really cool that we come together on this point from these different places, right? Like I'm coming to this as a fiction writer and a theater person. I played my first game maybe 10 years ago and I'm in my 40s, right? So it's also part of why I'm excited to include other kinds of media in here. I think that also connects to accessibility and interest and like bringing people in to this community. Maybe you have never played a game before, but you do love speculative fiction, and there's going to be some really great spec fic in this book. And then maybe that inspires you to want to play in those worlds by trying this very short game that, as Nat said, is way more accessible than having to read a tome. And so I'm hopeful that this connects different communities and people with different interests, and brings them into our scripted games universe.
It's so interesting you bring up that point, Brigitte, because I have a friend who is not a TTRPG person. A gamer, likes board games, likes card games, all that kind of stuff, isn't sort of opposed to that in any way, but has always been like, I'm not going to do these TTRPGs. They take forever. They're years-long things. I just don't want to do that. I don't want to have to learn this whole thing. But recently he came up to me and was like, hey, have you heard of this game? And I was like, no, why? He's like, because I picked up the TTRPG, like the book, because I wanted to read it, because inside was just incredible amounts of lore and spec fic. and he was like, yes, and it's amazing because he was like, I don't like this stuff is in here. Like, is that why you guys buy all of these books? And I thought that's really great. And the way, because what Nat, you were saying has me thinking about how I run my games and also the communities in which I run them. Like I have always been like, I have the most fun when I play with, there's this group that is mostly improvisers and storytellers, comedians, all that kind of stuff, because they're just really good and quick at driving a story forward. And they know, because they've been trained to, how to connect all of these things. And then when I go to other groups, I'm like, oh, this isn't working quite the same way. But I think that you had a great point about like, how do you still connect all of these things so that you can honor these ideas? And I think that that's I think that all GMs should sort of take that away a little bit of like, if you're feeling like it's not working like your other group, that's because you're in a new community and probably means you should be doing different things. So that's a really interesting point. And I kind of want to bring that back to the anthology too, because some people are going to take a look at an anthology book and say like, man, that's so many like games to learn. Like, I feel pretty intimidated by this. There's like, what is this? There's like a 10-page story in the middle of this book. Is that important? Should I read it? So like, what are you trying to either do or to sort of present to people in a way that they feel like this is accessible, this is something that I can pick off the shelf and bring to those groups that maybe have never played a game, but you're like, my friend loves Bigfoot and there's a game about Bigfoot in here. So like, how are you guys approaching that from a production, but also like a curatorial standpoint, I guess? Yeah. How did you go about that?
Well, I can do a preamble and then I want to hand it to Brigitte, because I historically had that same resistance to anthologies. Yeah. And Brigitte and I have gone back and forth about this, because I too was like, no, it's just a pile of stuff. Yeah. And I would also be like, that's too much. It's huge. Like, I just wanted, because I love little books, obviously. I wanted like tiny little zine that's just like one idea unit, and it fits in my pocket and it's a secret thing I carry around. And I was like, I'm not sure that I like get the idea of it because it has that risk. Right. I think in the interim, since I felt like that, I've done a little bit of anthology stuff, which we actually have in Psychic Trash Detectives, a short anthology. And then I've read some amazing anthologies, including one that Brigitte was involved in called New Year, New You, which Brigitte can talk about in more detail. But when I read that anthology, which Brigitte actually has a story in, I was like, oh, damn, every single thing in here is good. Yeah. And then it felt like it was just a source of all of these ideas, and I could kind of delve into there. And I started to think about how fun it is to have conversations like, which story in here did you connect with the most? How did you feel about the juxtaposition of these pieces? And thinking about it as a kind of like polyvocal moment. But also New Year, New You and some of the other anthologies recently that I've picked up that I love are not too big. So it's like, I think maybe we're going to think about that here, where it's not going to be like 3 inches thick. Like, we're going to curate it to be doable, to sit down and read. But Brigitte, I've talked about a lot of things that I think you have strong opinions about too. So
I agree with everything that you said. And I think I came to this from a slightly different place just because I personally love anthologies, even bad anthologies. I love both the sort of art of something that is carefully curated and things are in the exact right order to curate a really cool experience if you read it beginning to end. And certainly I'm going to be thoughtful about that as the editor of this book. And also, and this is not a thing I should say as the editor of this book, you don't have to read it like a book. Like, you do not have to pick up an anthology and read it beginning to end. And I think that is part of what intimidates folks about anthologies. I mean, truly, part of the point of it is that you have a whole bunch of cool stuff to pick from. So like, flip through it, skip over a thing you don't like, find the thing that you do love, start at the end, see what that's like, right? And then we're going to have an anthology that's full of all different kinds of stuff. If you want to just read the fiction, just read the fiction. If you want to just play some games, play some games. If you want to flip through and see some really amazing cryptid art, do it. And I think that tactile interaction with an anthology like that, where like you're touching it and you're moving around and you're looking at things, and then it's also stimulating your brain in different ways depending on where you've started, and where you can have the kinds of dialogue that Nat is talking about your experience of something versus somebody else, just makes, I think, anthologies such a cool place for both a personal experience and a cool community experience. The project that Nat is referring to that I had the privilege of working on is an anthology called New Year, New You, a speculative anthology of reinvention. And that was actually a particularly cool community-driven project I got to be on the editing team for that, and I do also have a short story in there. It is fully an anthology of speculative fiction, all about the theme of reinvention and reimagination. It's edited by Chris Campbell, who's a good friend of mine, who's just a brilliant writer and editor. And that came about because a group of speculative fiction authors who all went to a workshop called Viable Paradise, which is really incredible. They're actually taking applications now, so people should apply. It's so good. We attended that together in 2023. Instantly became best friends, all of us, all 24 of us, and came out of that experience and really loving one another's work, wanted to do this project, and wanted to break down barriers to putting our work out in the world. And we kickstarted it in this really cool and successful way where we were the writers, we were the publishers, and we got to collaborate to curate this really cool speculative fiction anthology. And I think that part of what makes it cool is that, similar to Tales from the Cryptids, even though it's not working in different media, it doesn't have that like very that kind of like there is one narrative voice experience that some anthologies do. It really is all over the place in terms of genre and style and tone and different kinds of stories that are all connected by a theme. And that really excites me, both because I love all different kinds of stuff, but also because it does speak to that desire to be able to flip through and have different experiences depending on what your tastes are, and find something that you fall in love with that might be next to something that you never would have read or engaged with if it wasn't right after the thing that you loved. And then you give it a try and it expands the possibilities for what you might like to engage with in the future. So yeah, I would agree that's a cool project to comp this to.
Yeah, and what you guys are talking about actually makes me think, because one of the games that I've picked up in the last few years that has been kind of, and it's become a phenom across the industry, is like Morkborg. But when I look through my book, it is, 2 pages of like, okay, this is like basic rules, and then there's like the Shadow King's palace with like a little like a little blurb and stuff like that, and then you go over and you're like, oh, who are these people? You know what I mean? Like, it is, the best ttrpgs are designed as sort of anthologies of like, we're sprinkling a little bit of flavor in their atmosphere so that you as a GM can kind of be like, ooh, this is the atmosphere that I'm going for. So I think it's really interesting, like you are all saying, of taking that sort of necessity and the thing that people want, which is like, give me the vibes, right? Like, give me what this is, but then pair it with a lot of different ideas so that you can pick through and find the one that resonates with you the best. I think that is such a great idea, especially for folks who are trying to, like you were saying, Nat, try to get somebody interested or into a game. You just really want to play with your wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, or like a group of people. Like if you go to a live art drawing group and you're like, these people rock, but I'd really love to like get them to try this. Like, anthologies are a way to do that. Instead of having to buy lots of little things, you can get this one thing that the theme is something that this group would like. So I think that is such an interesting, cool thing to publish. Also, as you said, Nat, it's like risky because you're like, all of this stuff isn't from our minds that we work in. Yeah. So it is like you're showing a lot of faith in your community as well, which is really great to see. We're coming sort of to the end of our conversation, but I want to kind of get another sort of sales pitch, I guess, from you. I hate that we have to do that, but I want to hear who is the right person to pick up this anthology? Who are you hoping stumbles across it? How are you hoping it's used both in a game and a non-game way, as you're all talking about? So maybe both of you can give me your pitch, and then we'll close it out with some info about how people can get involved and get this when it comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have an interest in cryptids, first and foremost, if that theme is interesting to you, right, and you're going to see cryptids on the cover of this, right, we're very intentionally including on the cover. We worked with this really great artist, Amber Ramirez, who's a tattoo artist and just a really great illustrator. She created this cool image that includes Bigfoot, Mothman, and Squonk. And I think Squonk in particular is just a lightning rod for people's attention who love cryptids and who understand cryptids. So if when I say Squonk, you say hell yes, you were going to find something you love in this book. We did that on purpose. But I mean, I think truly, if that theme of outsider stories explored through the lens of cryptids is really interesting to you, if you want to explore frameworks for telling stories around that theme, if you want to engage with reading stories that explore that theme, if you love speculative fiction, if you love poetry, if you just love weird zines and you want to flip through and see the cool ephemera we're including in the margins, I think that this is going to be a really fun experience for a lot of people.
And Nat?
I will add my perspective, which is everything Brigitte said. And then also, I find anthologies to be incredible tools for teaching because they provide this sort of wide perspective on a particular theme. So in any classroom context attached to game design where that theme could connect with what you're doing, anthologies are amazing. I teach with anthologies all the time in my classes, both creative writing and game design. And I would love to see people who are learning game design interact with this as a means to learn, as a means to think through writing a first game, or as a means to like kind of grow the games criticism space where people talk about what can happen and find a game in this anthology that's really innovative and weird and kind of pushes some design boundary or introduces an idea for a mechanic that's really cool and that is really meaningful to someone. I have games like that I've found in anthologies that are like literally 2 pages. And I've spent years with this one game, being like, we all have to play this. Hey, we can play this. Like it takes like 30 minutes or whatever. Like I would love for it to be a source of that. I think just anybody who is interested in those conversations outside of learning, like working game designers, people who want to kind of think about what games can be and do, I think is like it's generally an audience for me. And specifically when you do an anthology, I think you can really reach folks who like do scholarship and stuff because of that intersection between games, themes, designers who are working within that landscape, and then designers who are interested in those designers. So like, for me, it's like my Metatopia pals, my students, the other professors that I know and love in the New York City area, and anyone kind of anywhere who would like fit in a similar category. I think they will really love this.
Let me throw my 2 cents too into this, just from what you guys have said, and also from what you've already produced, because I've played a lot of your games. For the audience, we are all struggling in an era of like just slop being given to us, stuff that isn't thought through, stuff that doesn't really feel like soulful. And the one thing that I can advocate for, I haven't seen any of the games in this anthology or any of the stuff in this anthology yet, but the thing that I can advocate for is that runs through all of Scryptid's games is that there's this huge heart and soul that like, when you read these, I can already say you're going to feel like a real person made this and had a real feeling behind it. And I think, in a time where we're trying to be socialized to stop requiring soul from our art, I think that this is going to be already, I can't promise anything. Like I said, I haven't seen it, but I think this is going to be a nice little different thing in a mass of just goo that doesn't make you feel anything. So that's my 2 cents. Let's also talk about the real brass tacks. How can people get involved? You said that there's an open call coming up. Also, where can people get this game? How is it coming out? Where can people go to look? As always, I'm going to try to collect all of these links and then throw them into the notes below. So what is the first step people should go? Should they go to your website and try to look out for a newsletter or something? Should they just send in their game ideas to you guys right now via an email? What are you guys looking for?
Well, we have to crowdfund it first. So we are crowdfunding this game as part of Zinetopia on BackerKit. So it will launch February 2nd. It goes through February 27th. So we already have, a preview page up on BackerKit. So you can find Tales from the Cryptid. It is Cryptids. It's also linked from our website.
You can see what a squanch is.
You can see what squonk is.
Squonk, sorry. I think squanch is something else.
You can also make a Cryptid up named Squanch.
Yeah.
You're allowed to do that.
100% can. And then once this is funded, right, the level that we fund it at determines how many things we can accept through our open call. So it's really important, if you are excited about this game, to get your pre-order in. But for this book, through our crowdfunding campaign through Zenetopia in February, once we determine how many submissions we are able to take, we'll be opening to submissions later in the spring. And then the idea is that we are trying to print this book around Halloween in the fall. And so we will be celebrating and distributing around that time.
Yeah, so I should add that this episode is taped in January, but it's probably going to be released mid-campaign, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but I think we're going to be doing it. So right now, you can go to that BackerKit link, and it's not going to be that preview page. It's going to be active, so you can go there right now. You can go into the little show notes and click the little link and go there. So do that. Sorry to interrupt. Continue.
I was just going to add, like, we're, again, we're recording in January, but we have some really fun stuff we're doing with the crowdfunding campaign. We're going to be making a add-on zine called The Real Cryptids of Baltimore. And this is just like a trashy little zine that we're going to make for backers who want to get a little extra of the heart and soul of Scryptid Games. And the goal of this zine is to get real anonymously submitted stories of cryptid sightings from people in Baltimore. And Brigitte, I think you're going to put up some calls for.
We are flyering all over the city.
That's amazing.
We're going to do little ads in papers, right? We're going to get some good stories for you.
Yes, and this is actually based on. In my neighborhood, actually in New York City, there were flyers out for a zine about rats that some people did, where the people anonymously submitted stories of encounters with rats. And then they made this amazing rat zine, including, like, gorily enough, like, photos of, like, dead rats on the street, which is sort of extreme, but, like, it was very trashy and city. And, like, we're going to make a little zine like that. It's going to be something that's just, like, it's not like part of our, like, big, like, polished games catalog. It's like a cool thing we're doing with this campaign. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is we're thinking of also offering a class cool. that I would be teaching on ttrpg design, so that if you're interested in submitting, you can take a class with me, and I'll get you started on doing a design for a short ttrpg, so that maybe you could write a game and submit to our open call. So
that's so cool.
We're going to have a reward level for feedback on your submission too. So you'll be able to do that as well if you would like feedback from us before you submit.
Amazing. Yeah. And the last thing, because we talked about it so much about being in sort of a two-way relationship with your community, how does one become part of that community? I know that there's, the sort of highfalutin sort of like, hey, you picked up a book, you're part of the community. But what does it actually mean to, like, be in conversation with Scryptid? Is it signing up for a newsletter and being able to send feedback and things that way? Is it totally different? Where do you guys go to cultivate your community? Is it hyper local, or can people who are outside of New York and Baltimore and all those kind of places on the East be able to be part of it as well?
Mm-hmm. Say yes and yes and yes. So I think, in our communities, Nat, I know that you are really active at 20-Sided Store in New York. In Baltimore, we're pretty active at No Land Beyond. We also have a relationship with a store called Omnihedral. So you happen to be hyper local listeners to this show, you can find us at those stores. We also go to conventions, right? We mentioned Metatopia. We're at PAX Unplugged every single year. And if you do sign up for our newsletter, you will find out about those things. So if you are wanting to engage with us in person, definitely find us at conventions. If you are in either of our cities, look us up. We'd love to play a game with you. We have a Discord community that you can become part of, where we chat and we share information with each other. Sometimes we play games. It's pretty fun. We're pretty active on Instagram and Blue Sky, so follow us there. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So if you do sign up for our newsletter and you have a question, we are actual human beings, and you can email us and we'll talk to you because we're people.
Amazing. All right, everyone. If you want to be a part of the Scryptid community, do all of that stuff. There will be links to almost all of it in the show notes. But also go to that backer page and back it right now. I think that any sort of publisher who is actively trying to create a system where they can collect people's like indie games and stories and all of that and publish it in a place where you can actually hold it and show your friends, that's such a rare and cool opportunity. So let's support the people who actually are doing that work. If you like Tabletopped and the work that we do, you can come back every other Monday. We release bi-weekly, and we'll always have cool conversations like this. If you want to support us, you can go to our where will you go? You can go to our Patreon, Tabletop. You can go to our website, tabletop. Oh my God, guys, it's been a long day. Here we go. You can go to our website, tabletoppod.com. There is a contact form there to get in touch with us. We read every single one. If you want to talk about specific topics or want me to try to chase down a specific guest, I will do that. You can also go to our Patreon, patreon.com/tabletopped. We have cool stuff there, like extra episodes, behind the scenes, a secret podcast called Wild Magic. And we also have a couple of game design stuff that we've put up there, all for free, but you can also get some of the cooler stuff if you back it with a little bit of a donation. All right, everyone, please go be part of a Scryptid community, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.